Well, welcome, colleagues. Thank you very much for your time and attention. As always, we promised a 30-minute teleconference. It might be a bit unnerving to see how fast we march through all this, but we always hope the outcome after 30 minutes is at least an agenda item, ideally coupled with data that's placed on a technical committee agenda. But of course, that's not always possible. Sometimes ideas have to gestate for a while, and that's probably the case with today's topic, where we'll be focusing principally on the drinking water standards. And we have the pleasure and the privilege of having one of our experts from NSF International on the call today. Monica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Monica Leslie. I'm the Secretariat for the several of the drinking water joint committees, which is our consensus body for our drinking water standards, drinking water additives, system components, which oversees standard 61 and the standard 372, which is the low lead procedures, and then our drinking water treatment units and drinking water additives treatment chemicals as well.
So, Monica, I'm not sure if you would like to, but while we're talking, if you want to call up a part of your screen you're comfortable with discussing this, just let me know. We'll cut over to your screen. But before we do that, Alan, I'm with Alan every other week. He's a faithful guy, and he and I managed to keep up this communication link fairly strong. Alan, do you want to say something a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Alan Rose, and like Monica, I'm the Secretariat for various joint committees at NSF. The ones that we typically talk about here when Mike and I get together are, well, it's primarily been biosafety. There's been a couple of discussions about food safety, but mostly it's biosafety cabinetry, and that is Standard 49.
Okay. So for our audience, you have access to this website. You actually have access to this whole agenda, and if you're interested, simply email me. I can give you a robust link. This is Google Sites here. Very often it's very hard for you to key this in, so if I send it to you, there will be another place where it's we have a cleaner URL, and you can come to this location and you'll see many of the issues very shortly that we're discussing here on that website. So it's a little bit easier to get to that one. So, okay, so the question has to do, today's discussion is largely the drinking water standard and the claim by the Plumbing Contractors of America that this new low lead pipe valves, fittings, etc. will cost 20% more for the components. And their experience is then more labor will be involved, higher training levels, and I guess particularly silicon's involved. The material is harder in these components and they're more difficult to solder. I'm not sure if you get into the nuts and bolts of that at all, Monica or Alan?
I mean, the committee does. As far as the, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I've lost my screen there.
Are you able to call up the 61
Okay.
screen? Do you have the 61 screen there?
With the stand, oh, I'm sorry, the Standard 61 website.
Right. Do you have that? It might be worth them seeing.
How do I do that on here, though? I'm looking to see.
Well, the other thing I can do, I can do it right here. Here's your list of standards.
I'm sorry, I'm not actually familiar with this particular format interface on how to share my screen. Oh wait, here's an option.
We're patient. Find it, Alan and I will maybe move ahead. You get it ready, and I can cut over to your screen where you're more comfortable. There actually is something down here. I kept some of the material that's relevant to this, and I believe that one of the we began to. Here's a cut sheet that tends to want to describe the whole regulation. Maybe that'll help others to see what we're talking about here. If I can get it up, there we go. So we heard about this late. My work group tries to watch to see what concepts are out there that affect our industry, and we were working on other issues I'm not really sure, had we been able to follow this, if we would have had any influence over its outcomes. Clearly, we're spending $300 billion on facilities, and I'll say 40% is mechanical construction and maintenance, so there's $120 billion, and then maybe the piping of a system of a building is something on the order of maybe 10%. So maybe say $10 to $20 billion is at stake for us with this regulation. And so here is the Plumbing Contractors of America telling us what the effect is going to be. Some of them are rather ambivalent. They understand that this will cost their customers more. They're concerned about that. And of course, it is an opportunity also, for making money. And so they're trying to be responsible with this cut sheet. So they're helping educate their customers here, which is a good thing. So are you able to, is there anything on your screen that you'd like us to see?
No, but perhaps I could just give a little bit of the background, like a little, like a brief background on how, I don't know if that's what you're interested in. Sure. Or not, of how this came to be in the standard.
Perfect.
First,
go ahead.
Standard 61 and then 372. Originally, well, first of all, let me just explain what 372, Standard 372, is basically it's the procedure for evaluating the average lead content about for products. It originally was under an annex under Standard 61, Annex G, and it was in there for over 3 years. It was put in there actually back in 2008 into Standard 61 as a result of the individual state regulatory requirements being promulgated and that limited the amount of lead contained. So this was added into 61, and it was just the procedure for evaluating the lead content in these products. It was determined, though, by the committee that, and approved back in 2010, that 372 should exist as like a standalone standard, and they pulled it out of 61 for a couple of different reasons. They expected that 372 might be useful for products that may not necessarily fall under the scope of 61. You know what I mean? That may not be alignment with that, and so it just provided greater flexibility, in its application. And because 61 and 372 are implemented in different ways, they've been adopted by almost all of the states. I think there's still a couple that have not adopted these. But it can vary from state to state and how that is, and it happens, and it allows individual jurisdictions to maybe have requirements for 372, but not necessarily all of 61, maybe just parts of 61. That's just the general idea of why that was put out as a separate standard.
So when you say that they've been adopted by states, that means they've been incorporated by reference into a plumbing code?
Correct. Adopted into law by individual states that they're, for instance, state of California, like for instance, their water utilities, and public water supplies must use products certified to Standard 61.
Okay, sure. Well,
but you know what I mean. The way in which it's I can't speak to every individual state and the implementation and the laws, but they have been adopted by most of the states. Okay.
Well, yeah, our understanding is that this concept was tracking early in California, as typical for the pattern out there, and that then this was broadened elsewhere. So I guess they were the alpha or beta site for this, and one consideration, so we know it becomes part of the law by reference. It becomes a referenced product and installation standard into the code, and the code becomes part of the law. So one of the so you'll see actually some thought about that from our contractors. So I think what they were trying to say here was that, at least in the state of Michigan, there doesn't appear to be any enforcement authority at the moment.
Okay. And see, I'm sorry, I can't speak to that. There might be someone else I can defer to at NSF that is in, you know what I mean, that from our business unit and our on the technical side, and implement, you know, our certification program, that is more familiar with even at the various state levels and even locally in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, I don't doubt that the NSF suite is a very well understood and respected suite, that the integrity of your organization usually is without question, and no, certainly I don't see any specific problems with the way the standard was developed. As always, we're looking for openings where we think we can rationalize some of our risk. One of the issues that had come up was that there may well be some expansion of this. The document, the standard as I understand it, deals with water which is only potable, but there's some, I guess there was some hint here that the expansion, so while new federal law mimics the California legislation, the key wording could greatly expand the scope of the federal rule. You know, we probably should have started this out by saying that NSF is a privately developed standard, but that the federal government preempted or superseded whatever the agency that deals with safe water. I believe it's EPA, or is it OSHA? Who's the organization?
EPA. EPA.
Right. Okay.
Well, I mean, Standard 61 is not right. This is a voluntary standard for evaluating products. It references the Safe Drinking Water Act, but it is not a you know what I mean? This is not a regulatory document. This is just Standard 61 is the standard for evaluating products.
Right.
And one of the criteria is, and it does reference in here, where the products, you know, where the Safe Drinking Water Act, the low lead law applies. But it doesn't dictate what applies to that.
Well, that's right. And farther down the agenda here, you'll see me ask a larger question about the degree to which federal agencies, whether they're executive branch or legislative branch, would be preempting privately developed standards such as yours to be incorporated by reference into public law. There's a larger dispute about how that's done. I think at some point here, I do have a I do have a place and possibly even a presentation about how we have divergences in how the ideals of the American standards development process confront or work with or convene with or conform to the strategic objectives of the federal government agencies. So that's not our discussion today, however, but it's underlying it. So one particular area here, though, is one, even though we were unable to put in comments, if comments were to even been of any help, if this particular requirement was going to happen anyway, we might have been only one of 1,000 commenters to say this risk is out of proportion to some of the other risks we face. But one area here that we've been asked to look out for is that the definition of potable water, and if you look deep in the language, maybe it's not a garden hose or a shower or a toilet, but you know, if it's possible that you get, I know as a boy, when I played baseball, I could go up to any stranger's garden hose and drink water from it. And I don't think that's done anymore. And so the possibility that you would extend this legislation to all piping, because it might be possible that somebody would be drinking something from water from an industrial process, for example. You know, suppose you're washing yarn. Somebody wants to get some water. You know, this, when you convey this out into some of the processes, industrial processes, and the use of water there, now it gets really pricey. We don't particularly have that. We don't have that. We don't have anybody in the hospital. I actually invited somebody from the American Society of Healthcare Engineers to this call, but we're trying to be mindful of how the application of this law might expand, and this might not be something that NSF has any control over. Am I mistaken? If your standard 61 is just one where you provide a benchmark for measuring, that's
correct. Well, we're not determining what would have to meet the requirement, and what the definition of, you know, what would be considered for potable water use. I mean, that is defined, although from the SCWA, but I don't know. You bring up a good point, because one of the areas of discussion that occurred at last year's Joint Committee meeting to try to get an exception defined in the standards was like for fire sprinklers, for instance. There are, you know, a couple of different types of fire sprinklers. You think that that's not used for drinking, but sometimes they're in line with multiple pipes that could be diverted for drinking. So should they have to meet the no lead or not?
Eye washes.
But that,
eye wash stations. Yeah, you're going to drink.
Exactly. But those lists, the specific list of products is not defined. That's defined under the EPA's list.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Not in the standard.
Was there any discussion in the committee about the lowering of the lead threshold down to 0.25? I know it was higher before.
That was in response to the law that was just implemented in January 2014. But this was that back in 2008 or 2010? I'm sorry, forgive. I'm looking at I'm going to try to find the exact date. It was, knowing that it was coming, it was put into the standard, but with a very long implementation date in anticipation of the law.
Yeah, we did. We were.
In the standard. It's been in the standard for several years. But again, and although the standard's not really supposed to, it's really up to the individual certifier company to decide when they're going to implement against the standard. There actually was provisions added to this standard in the annex when it was originally put in to allow for when the, a 3-year implementation period.
Okay. The source of the lead is largely the joining material, the solder and the flux. I think solder has a fair amount of it, and obviously the Copper Development Association must have had a role in some of this. I'm going to have to jump a little bit ahead to keep things moving here, but it seems plain to me that this is largely driven by the federal government, and they're leaning upon NSF international standards to give them some technical specifics to guide the way, but it's largely driven by the Safe Water Drinking Act. And
right. I mean, it's the way the standard 61 and 372 are a means of the procedure for evaluating. And they do. I mean, the minimum criteria is set in standard 61.
Yeah, it's very similar to UL.
I mean, the TAC. Yeah.
Underwriters Labs performs the same service for other types of hazards, consumer products and such. So I get that. So it's very clear this conference call explains where NSF's role is in this, and it's largely federally driven by this, with some of the technical specifics from NSF. Our hope is that because it's easier, at least for us, to work through the continuous maintenance process, what concepts, as Al knows, I always try to have, I always try to put front forward the possibility that we could put an item on a committee agenda. This is a blank form. We don't always get there, but my ideal is always to come away and close these teleconferences out with an idea that a committee can discuss. We're not there yet on this particular issue. We're largely reacting to all this stuff. And my charge at the moment is just simply, what is the additional costs? We'll have to build this into our first cost equations. And there's also another area here. My colleague Ken Behringer had said that we're probably going to see more pipe breaks because the contractors are saying it's a higher level of skill that's necessary. That when you make a pipe joint, that you've got to have the solder has to leach into the way the metals interface, and so it's likely that if you're making 1 million or 10 million joints like that a year, you're going to see more pipe breaks, and we just have to be ready for that. That will be what I'll call an offsetting cost. So we talked a little bit about this. Here's a question. If you could, Monica, could we have access to anybody in the education and healthcare industry with a vote on the 61 committee? Could we get that?
Yeah, I mean, I can provide. Yes, I absolutely can provide you with the names and affiliations of our committee members, of our voting members.
Okay.
There is not currently a voting member from U of M. I do know that.
Anybody from a university or a hospital?
Let's see. On this particular committee, we have had university members, but I'm actually thinking of another committee. No, mostly our public health regulatory and public agency representatives are from different state departments, public health departments, federal,
what I call enforcement, conformity assessment professionals, I think.
But also, actually, in the U.S. military, we have representatives from the Navy Marine Corps Public Health Center, which they are a user. They are not they are a user.
Well, I wouldn't mind. Could I get those names then also? that would be nice.
Sure.
I won't do it here, but Alan is often flashed on the screen. I don't want to. We are coming. We have about 10 more minutes left. That he would flash on the screen what the proportion of users are. Usually, it's on the order of 10%. And of that 10%, I always like to ask the question: of those users, how many are actually paying for the outcome or the intended consequence or effect of this, meaning that person, the user owner, final fiduciary, the guy who's holding the bag for all these great intentions, he's rarely at these meetings. The people who want to teach out of it, professors, technical instructors, instructors for plumbing, the plumbing trades, they're also called a user. And we don't think that that's, and it's not your fault. Frankly, it's the fault of our industry. We're working on that. One of the reasons we're having Nancy out here is just to explain our case. And they already know this. So we're going to try to work out something that would help advance the case of the, what we'll call user owner final fiduciary. Because the inspectors and the conformity assessment are always, nobody in the finance department complains about paying the inspector and his staff. Nobody complains about that. They will complain about somebody who will say, well, maybe there's a bit of overreach by the inspection department. Nobody's paying his salary. So, and it cuts across the entire U.S. economy. So we're getting that fixed slowly but surely. So I guess these other, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, in the case of the Standard 61 committee, this joint committee, the largest percentage of users for this particular committee would be the water utilities, local water utilities. They represent the majority of our users.
Okay.
Are using, so that. But I'd be happy to give you a list of the voting members and their organizations.
Okay.
If I can just send that directly to you.
Sure, sure. I have to tell you though, it's just another piece of data that I use. You know, Alan gave me again gave me a readout of, and I'm grateful for it. Is we were putting together a more comprehensive document that explains the proportion of user owner final fiduciaries, and it's endemic everywhere. And we're trying to get those folks, what I call them code writers and vote getters, funded. So, okay, I guess we have to march through more of this here. So, what kind of proposals and comments are left? I'm seeing that committee is still in motion here. If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw some action here farther down. Maybe I didn't. 55, 60, that's 62 I saw. Since you're close to the committee, Monica, what are they doing? Where are they in their cycle?
Well, the upcoming annual meeting is coming up on December 4th of this year. So they meet once a year in person, but all year, and at that annual meeting, that's where the majority of the new issue papers are being collected right now. We've solicited for new issue papers for this upcoming annual meeting, but issues go to ballot all year long, and anyone could submit an issue paper at any time throughout the year. It truly is under continuous maintenance. But I can tell you right offhand, I mean, there are a couple of ballots that have just gone through, a couple of issues. As far as other committee work, I don't know if you want to know specific projects. There are quite a few task groups that have been meeting over the course of the year. Mm-hmm. On all kinds of topics. We have a task group on copper tubing. That's a big issue right now to address copper. We have a task group getting back to lead. We have a task group on lead requirements for replacement components, because that's a whole nother, I don't want to say can of worms, but a whole nother issue to consider, especially with the low lead law coming into implementation. So how to address these replacement components.
Who is the committee chairman anyway? Just is there a name? Is that, you're free to give that to me?
Her name is France Lemieux. She is with Health Canada, and she is our current joint committee chair.
Okay, well, if we have people, we're not going to be able to. This is a bit of a fantasy on my part to think we could actually be, but it helps to know the action. As I try to say here, we actually started a LinkedIn group, and I'll let you see it. You'll see that there's only 2 members in it. Let's see, here we go. Yeah, we thought to what degree can we get social media to work with us? And obviously, I have enough work to keep a staff of 50 going. So we're a long way from this, and I have to pick. We have to pick our battles. And this one, though, I would like to get a better sense of what the cost is going to be in terms of additional, what we'll call a regulatory burden. We understand that it's in the interest of public safety. We get that. I'm not arguing about that. I just want to get a number together. And some of what you say helps help, at least my understanding, to how it got this way, what its origin is, and some clues as to what the effect might be upon our contractors and installers and the people who have to keep our pipes from breaking. So,
I definitely could put you in contact and give you some names of some folks that could definitely speak to this a little better than myself. You know, as far as on the regulatory side and implementation, you know, and the costs associated with that.
Okay, if there's anything out there, that would be great. I'll try to find somebody who can shadow me a bit on this one, but I don't put it in the top of your list. Put it in the middle to the lower. I think it would probably be more important, and I'm not even really sure. I was going to buy the standard, and I think once I get a champion to deal with it, we will get that standard bought, and we'll try to follow it more closely. But I have to tell you, if I were to look at drinking water safety compared to food safety, and since Alan's on the call, I still think that this is an area here. We've got a lot of kitchens in our industry. in hospitals and residence halls, and I think that if I were to say, if I had to pick between drinking water and food equipment, I'd pick food equipment. So, all right. So I think we're able to, this is what I'll be doing here, just trying to get some technical basis and understanding of how it got to be this way, where it might be going. I've had the good fortune to be able to work with some of the people on the state of Michigan plumbing code, and we'll see how that plays out specifically in Michigan, even though we try to make our reach national. So I did go, and anything else you want to say on this one? I know it's a very large topic. I hope our audience is enlightened by some of the discussion here. This is a horse out of the barn. There was nothing we could do to stop it, but we have to make the most of it, and understanding its effect is, and the contractors have done a good job to let us know what's going on. As always, in the back of our mind, we're thinking, why did it, is this market making, what is the data that informed the OSHA or the EPA requirement? That's too far upstream for us at the moment. There's too many things close to our area of influence that we have to deal with. Maybe in another year. Is there anything else that I might have failed that you wanted to say that I talked over you, Monica?
No, not that I can think of. This has been very good. I'm going to take another look at these questions and see if I can't get some additional answers for you. Okay.
Well, we do have a few more minutes here then, just to go through what's hit the docket here. For our audience, what I've done is I've gone to this week's standards action. Of course, this is usually typically reactive. If we are close to the action with NSF, then typically we already know this stuff. We're usually behind let me see, did I just lose that one? Yeah, here's the weekly standards action that applies to us right now. So all I've done is I've gone through this, and I see that sustainability assessment for water contact products. Oh, wait a minute here. Now this looks, what's this here now? What's 375 all about? And it's a new standard. I always look at those with more care. Can you tell us something about this one, Monica?
Well, I don't work in the sustainability area, so actually I'm afraid that is not my area. But it's a new standard that's looking at basically what it says there. It's looking at sustainability measures for companies that are manufacturing water contact products.
So that would be drinking fountains. If you're going to manufacture a drinking fountain, this is a standard for them to make that drinking fountain sustainable. Is that what I'm seeing?
Correct. And practices, and there's a lot of different factors going into it, but I'm afraid I can't speak to the details of that.
Okay. One. I guess Mindy sometimes calls in. All right.
Yeah,
so
Mindy, yeah.
I don't know. Again, seeing that my estimation is food safety is more important, I believe that we probably will be putting this aside. This always amuses me. Shower filtration systems. This accidentally, I got this one on here. I'm surprised about that. Again, it looks like another concept tracking through this particular standard. It's a new one, so let's see what we have. October 26th. More of the same. It's a different number though. This is 375 and this is 42. What's that all about?
42 is a drinking water treatment unit standard for that confirm or verifies claims for aesthetic effects. So chlorine reduction, taste and odor type claims. It's not a health effects standard.
Okay. All right. So you're into the smell of water.
Yes.
That's not enough. Okay, well, all right, let's see.
It can cause a huge problem for customers.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. Biosafety cabinetry. Keith's not on the call right now. And let's see, microbiological water treatment systems. That sounds like something our lab people might be interested in, distillation systems. So that's what's come over the transom over the past week. we don't have enough time to go over these. Obviously, I keep these teleconference notes here. We never have nothing to talk about, it turns out. But as always, I like to get a concept in front of your committees, and I'm struggling with that at the moment. So let's see. So this is me going to try more. We do have a couple people coming online to help us out with that, but it's usually a long, slow process. I'd like to recycle. Not recycle, but repurpose some of our most experienced people to this, because I think they're the ones that are able to do it. So I think that looks like a good enough 30-minute update. How does that feel to you, Alan?
It feels good, yeah. I mean, Monica did all the heavy lifting there for sure, so. Yeah, there's always, like you said, there's always stuff to talk about, and we usually do. So there's a number of things in biosafety cabinetry that we didn't go over there. That's going to be published again in December, and we've got currently 13 issues being sorted out through the balloting process. Almost all of them are complete. A couple have not successfully passed and probably won't go in this publication, but so there's a lot going on there. You know, there's related to food equipment. There's, you know, the lead piece. There's a couple of ballots going through, a couple of the lower hanging standards related to food equipment. Mm-hmm. The whole idea of potable water. And I think if you read some of the language that's buried in there, it actually suggests intended for drinking. I'm not the content expert, as you know, Monica said as well. You know, so I don't want to interpret things that way. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I think Monica explained all that perfectly, and yeah, there's obviously tons of things we can continue to talk about, but we don't want a 5-hour video either, right?
Right. I actually just got a reminder that I need to get on to another teleconference here at 10. So, okay, food safety and biosafety cabinets still remain upper priorities. This one here will follow. I think I can make a responsible recommendation to our people who are concerned about pipe breaks, for example, and additional costs. I think it's vetted well enough for the moment, and I'd rather see people on. Not that I don't want to see who's on that committee, but I would like to start rolling out, introducing the possibility that we'd be following some of these drinking water standards. So. Well, thank you very much for your time, Alan. I guess I will not see. I think hopefully we will see you. We will see you. Will you be there also, Monica?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I will.
Good. All right. So,
all right.
With that, no more closing reflections.
I have none.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
My pleasure. We'll see you. We'll see you in the meet space here on the 10th. That would be MEET.
All right.
Or would that be MEAT or MEAT? I'm not sure what that would be. So we're so used to meeting online. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye bye. Have a good day.
All right. Bye now.